If you've been playing the Pokemon TCG for a while, you'll know that lightning Pokemon seems to be one of the most favourite types of Creatures Inc. and the Pokemon Company. The amount of incredibly good Pokemon that the type gets is kind of ridiculous. And going into Mega Brave, Mega Symphonia, Mega Evolution, a new lightning Pokemon is going to be joining the fray, and it's a Mega Pokemon, that being Mega Manectric. I said in my set list review video that I think this is probably the best Mega Pokemon from the set, and at the moment in Japan it's seen like a little bit amount of play, but what exactly does it do? Mega Manectric is a 330 HP Mega Evolution Pokemon, and it has two attacks, two very strong attacks. Its first attack, Flash Ray for 2 lightning, does 120 damage, and then during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from basic Pokemon. So you do a decent amount of damage for 2 lightning energy, and then you're protected from all attacks from basic Pokemon. And looking around in the format, there aren't a whole lot of basic decks in the format, but decks are playing basic Pokemon. For example, Gardevoir is playing stuff like Screamtail, and it can also attack with Munkidori. You have Raging Bolt, which is all basic Pokemon, so for that matchup it's pretty free. I mean, stuff like Badoo, so you don't take damage from Badoo, but you still get item locked, so like that's a little bit of a downside. And then there's a couple of like other low tier decks playing basic Pokemon. I think Archaladon has started playing Mega Mawile, so you can't take damage from that. And you have stuff like Cynthia Spiritomb inside of the Cynthia deck. So you just have like these small basic Pokemon, and then you obviously have a couple of decks that are purely basic Pokemon. There's also a couple of decks that are playing Teal Mask Ogerpon, so you can't take damage from that. There isn't a whole lot of basic Pokemon or basic decks that it's protected from, but there is a couple of here and there, so it does have its pretty niche uses against specific decks. But the main power of this card comes from its second attack. Riot Blaster for 3 lightning energy, does 200 damage, but you may discard all energy from this Pokemon, and if you do, it does 130 more damage for a total of 330 damage for 3 lightning energy at the cost of having to discard them all. 330 is a pretty good number to hit. You can knock out pretty much any Pokemon EX that isn't a Mega Pokemon. And lightning Pokemon have a plethora of different ways to accelerate lots of lightning energy into play, as well as get lightning energy out of the discard. For example, Electric was just reprinted in Black Bolt and White Flare, letting you attach a lightning energy from your discard to a benched Pokemon, so you will need to put Manectric out of the active, power it back up and then bring it back in. But Manectric has free retreat on a Mega Pokemon with 0 retreat. That's already pretty good. Not to mention we also have stuff like Magneton, which at the cost of knocking itself out can attach free lightning energy onto your Pokemon. So you could very easily just, attack and knock something out with Mega Manectric. Then during the next turn, knock out one of your Magnetons, attach that energy back on, and do it again. Which is the main way that Japanese players have been playing this deck. They've mainly been playing it with, obviously, Mega Manectric, maybe some copies of Iron Hands and Zekrom EX. A couple have also been playing Miraidon, so you can very easily get lightning Pokemon into play. And then deck lists have been flip-flopping between either Dynamo or Electric or Magneton. And it seems that Magneton has been the more favourable card in a couple of decks. During early deck lists, they were relying more on Electric. They were basically playing a Miraidon deck, but with Mega Manectric in the deck. But some deck lists have started to focus more on Mega Manectric rather than these other lightning Pokemon. Sure, you can play stuff like Iron Hands EX for some very early game Ampy Very Muches for extra prize cards. Zekrom EX is good for the late game, being able to hit a huge amount of damage for free energy. You kind of don't really need to play Zekrom because Manectric can hit the same amount of damage Zekrom does in the late game, in any point of the game basically. Zekrom's attack does 50 more damage for each prize card your opponent has taken, so if your opponent's taken 4 prize cards you can hit 330 damage, but Manectric can just do that anyway for the same amount of energy. So I honestly don't see why players are playing Zekrom, to be honest. And of course, lightning Pokemon have access to Electric Generator, being able to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and attach up to 2 lightning energy you find there to your Pokemon in any way you like. Which is, always pretty powerful because you can just use a couple of them, get a Pokemon very easily powered up and get a very early game attack. So in terms of this deck's playability, At the moment, again, it is seeing a pretty low amount of playability, but we are into the first couple of weeks of this set being legal in Japan, so that could rise up or it could fall down. Lightning, electric types are a very popular type of deck in the Pokemon TCG, so some players might start picking it up or some players might start dropping it for other decks, we never know. But I think some players will find an excuse to pick up the Miraidons again, seeing how popular it was over the last 2 years. Plus again, Lightning have access to very, very strong cards. So this deck's game plan, I imagine, is probably to go second and try and get an early Ampu very much. But in all honesty, I can probably see this deck going first, trying to set up an Electrike and maybe a couple of Magnemites or a couple of Tynamos. So then during the next turn, you can evolve into them, start attaching energies with stuff like Electric Generator, get your first Riot Blaster off, and then you can just start looping the energies back with stuff like Magneton and Electric on following turns. Basically just keeping the pressure on your opponent by having access to Riot Blaster every single turn, or even then just using the first attack if they haven't evolved into an EX Pokemon at the moment, or if they're playing, you know, a basic deck, you can just spam that first attack and just be completely immune and force your opponent to basically bring something else up in order to deal damage. In terms of the deck's playability going forward into like rotation and stuff, I don't think it'll be seen play past rotation unless we get some really, really good pieces of lightning support, because next rotation we lose a lot of stuff: Iron Hands, Miraidon, Electric Generator, a couple of item cards, a couple of supporter cards, and you're basically just left with Manectric, Magneton, Electrike, and maybe some other lightning Pokemon like Zeraora seen play in a couple of decks because you can snipe benched EX Pokemon. And then you obviously have stuff like Fezandipiti and Latias, which are seen play in a couple of decks. You lose Mew, which is a really good form of draw support. Some decks have also been playing Rigid Band to reduce the damage that Mega Manectric takes, because it is a stage 1 Pokemon. And I believe that also does rotate next year. So in terms of the deck altogether, it's strong, it has access to some very good cards and some very good support. However, looking at deck lists, deck space does seem to be pretty tight because you play a lot of different Pokemon, a lot of different support Pokemon, and not many supporters, to be honest. You play a couple of Junipers, a couple of Bosses, maybe a couple of Lilies, an Iono, and that's kind of it. And then other than that, you just play Pokemon and a bunch of item cards and a bunch of energy. Most deck lists are playing over 10 energy cards, which is a bit overkill, but your lightning Pokemon do require quite a lot of energy. Ampu very much is 4 energy, Mega Manectric's free energy for its attacks. If you decide to attack with Miraidon, that's also free energy. I think Zeraora's free energy as well. You can kind of see where it gets out of hand. But the deck does have some pretty good strengths. You have this obviously very high HP, high damaging Pokemon that also has free retreat. You have access to a bunch of different recovery cards, so you can very easily get energies back into play. You have some very, very strong Pokemon that you can attack with in the early game. You also have some very good late game Pokemon, some very, very niche type Pokemon. Again, Zeraora can easily snipe bench Pokemon. You can get rid of a Latias, a Mew, a Fezandipiti on the bench. And then you also have stuff like Zekrom for a late game attacker if you can't get a Mega Manectric back into play or they've been knocked out, so on and so forth. And obviously Electric Generator is a really good card. If you're able to get it off, sometimes you will fail a generator here and there. You may even fail multiple, and that does feel pretty bad. Going into Mega Evolution, I can see this deck being picked up. I know a lot of people are a fan of Miraidon, so they'll want any excuse to pick those cards back up. But going into rotation, I personally think this deck is going to drop off unless we see any other form of lightning support that can replace the cards that will be lost from rotation. The deck is very strong, able to hit a lot of damage, pretty much one-hit KO most Evolution EX decks. I think it does struggle against Mega Evolution decks because you are going to want to 2-hit KO a couple of Pokemon. Mega Venusaur has 380, I think Mega Lucario has 340. In the mirror, you can, 1-hit KO opposing Mega Manectrics. There are also a couple of other Mega Pokemon you can very easily 1-hit KO, but there are that couple of Mega Pokemon that you aren't going to be able to 1-hit KO, but those Mega Pokemon you probably aren't going to see very often. It's mainly going to be our standard Evolution EX Pokemon, which the deck does have very, very good matchups against, just being able to 1-hit KO anything, and then during the next turn get those energies back into play and do it again. And I can't really think of much else to say about Mega Manectric. It's very strong, very aggressive. It also does have some pretty good benefits for it. Free retreat obviously on a Mega Pokemon and access to so much good lightning support does make it a very favourable deck. but at the moment other decks are just better than it. It is seeing a good decent amount of play, but in terms of its future, it's not really looking that good. And that's it for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you think about Mega Manectric EX. Is this a deck that you're going to be looking to pick up? Are you looking forward to picking up your Miraidons again and playing all of those good electric Pokemon, so on and so forth? One last hurrah, I guess, for Miraidon and all that kind of stuff before all those cards eventually rotate out of the game. Do you think that this deck will rise up to be the next best deck, as we've seen with a bunch of other lightning Pokemon previously in the game and so on and so forth? Do you think we'll get some busted lightning support? Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all of that nonsense, and I will see you in the next video, whatever that video may be. Take care.